Hello. So I don't have a cover for the book that I'm going to share with you now. I think I've probably got a picture of one that I will put on the website, but the Kindle version I have didn't have a proper cover, so I can't show you a lovely picture. But it's called Lady Beth, and it's by Caroline E Farrell, which you'll know from the bit before the video. And it's just an extraordinary story. It's not a massively long story, it's not a massively long book, but I read it right through. I was very lucky to have a whole day to myself to read, and I think it's best read like that. It's one of those stories that gathers pace and gathers tension, and it builds to this extraordinary crescendo of really powerful dialogue, and I think if I'd kept putting it down I would have lost some of that momentum. I think it's well written enough that that would work, but to read it all through was I'm really glad I had that opportunity. So it's a story I would never in a million years have picked up, and that's why I love doing this. Really love it because it challenges me to read things that I wouldn't ordinarily, and I'm glad I've read this book. It's really, really moving. It's the story, a very complicated story, as it turns out, of a youngish mum and her teenage son who dies of a drug overdose. So ordinarily I've switched myself off because that's not a book I would want to read. But this is just beautifully written. It's completely engaging, and you start to, the mother's background starts to unravel, and her choices and decisions throughout her life story. But it's not in a kind of classical tell the story way, in a really clever way that bits of her life start to come back, and bits of her story get revealed. There's a policeman involved because of the death of her son and because of the drug situation in the town, and it turns out he's more involved than we think. It turns out that her past is actually totally relevant to what's happened to her son, and it's just that as she regains this sort of alter ego almost. She had shed the life, her pre-child life. She had shed that, and she had created this new life for her and her son. And as that shatters when he dies, so this old her, this survivor of her early experiences, comes out and sort of takes over and takes her back to those survival instincts, those ways of living that she knows all too well. And the characters that have been totally divergent suddenly start to merge together, and the stories start to intertwine, and it's just very cleverly done. I was completely swept away in the story, and as I say, it's not a topic I would have picked up. It's not nice to read in many ways because it's about stuff that's not nice, and yet it's completely compelling. I felt there is a sense at the end of justice and retribution, but there's also the sense that there could be more to come. So it does end, the book finishes, and the chapter finishes, but it's also a little bit open. I think there could be more of her story, certainly, and it's not a happy ending in a Disney sense. They don't skip off into the sunset, but there is, as I say, this sense of a mission being completed. It's quite a violent book. There's quite a lot of discussion of drug use, and anything else in there you need to know. She's had a rough childhood. Nothing overly graphic, nothing I didn't feel that I could read really powerfully written, but very accessible, and that amazes me when people can write about such stuff. As I say, that normally would switch me right off. And I have put books down before when I didn't feel it was content I wanted to bring into my world. I didn't feel that with this. I felt I could manage all of this. It's a really interesting story, and I would definitely encourage you to read it, because it's the sort of book that you're pleased you've read when you've finished. I hope, and I will be asking Caroline if there is more to come, because it's a really good stuff and she is a brilliant author.